Hello, my sweet friends. Welcome back. I hope you are all doing well. Happy Wednesday to everyone. As you know, that means we're going to have our regular tutorial style video. And for today, I have a very exciting project to share. And it is something I create for myself. I don't typically craft for myself, but I found a need for this specific thing. And so I'm excited to get to create this and to use it as well. So this is not a planner, this is a lister. And so I'm going to share with you how to create these fun inserts and the dashboards that go along with them, and then how I plan to use this instead of a planner going forward. So if that sounds good to you, then stick with me and we'll make it together. Can I just get personal with y'all for a minute and confess that I love a good planner. I love the cover, I love the dashboard, the stickers, the stamps. I love the fancy pen hanging off the side and all the little clips. I really love that there's a lot of structure involved with columns and categories, and I love for the people who can use them that it helps them stay organized and on top of things, and it gets all of the noise out of their head and onto a piece of paper so that they can focus on things that need their attention rather than all of the lists of stuff. And so I love that for them. However, my brain does not work that way. I have a barely contained chaos going on up there. And so I have attempted to use a planner. And for me, it turned out that the planner wasn't planning the work, the planner became the work. And so I really didn't feel like it was functioning for me in a way that many other people find it useful. But that's okay, because I accept that I'm a lister. I like a good list, but I need to keep them a little bit more organized. And so I'm going to share the planner concept, but make a lister so I have a place to organize and keep all of my lists so that my brain can be empty of all that clutter and I can be creative or do other things, and I know that I can go back and check and see what I've got going on. So here's my first attempt at the lister, and so I just actually wanted to use the scraps that I created during our 13 Days of Halloween series. I took a ready-made hardbound spiral notebook, removed pretty much the entire center of that, and then I added pattern papers and my embellishments to what was remaining. So that left me with a big old stack of these papers, and so my idea was that I would just turn them into inserts and I could add them to a cover, and that way I would have all my lists together. And so this little lister was born. I like it. I think the scale is not going to work long term, but the concept is solid. I've got my sturdy cover here, and I just put some fall papers on there. And then I've got a couple of little inserts added. I put those with elastic bands like a traveler's notebook. Then when I got my inserts filled in, I can just swap them out for a new one and then continue to work along. So this is the size that I wound up with. Utilizing those scraps, I can do better next time. I can add a little bit more length, and I'll tell you why when we get to that point, but I think this is pretty good for now. And this paper that I'm adding, of course, you saw did not have lines, but I found that pretty easy to add them. I've got some stencils here from a bullet journaling kit that I picked up, but you could easily just add those with a ruler if you wanted. And then I do have like a little stamp here, and so I've added that with this Spellbinders clear stamp that I picked up for journaling as well. And so I really found this was really easy. It took me like 2 minutes. I have 2 sections here. I will build on that for the next book, but I wanted one for working on personal things or the house, and then also one just for work. And so I'm going to continue using these 2 and build on that for the next one. I'm also going to do a pretty good deep dive into my sticker collection. So the next book I create is going to be for December, And so I thought it would be fun just to pull out all of these Christmas stickers. Look how many there are, you guys. These are all from previous collections that I've worked through. And so there's just so much potential here. And I'm going to create sticker clusters like I have been for my October Stories album. And so this is just going to be really useful to get some cute pages made to add to my book. Now, because I plan to swap out my inserts as I get them filled up, it made sense to me to use a more traditional color palette. So I went back to this Mistletoe Lodge and I found some of the patterns that I really liked. I was able to get really good use out of each of the 12 by 12 patterns, and so that makes me happy not to leave it in the scrap stash. And if I run out of a pattern, I can easily just swap out for a traditional color from another collection. So the size of the new insert is going to be determined by the best use of my paper. This is printer paper and it is 8.5 by 11. So I was able to cut that down into 5.5-inch portions, and then I folded that in half. So I'll get a 4.25 by 5.5-inch book. So I have arrived at 5 pages for the inside, and that will help not to add so much bulk. And I will also be adding a cover in, so I just cut that one to the same measurement. Now I will be using my long arm stapler to attach these pages, but you could easily stitch these if you had an awl. You could punch down in there and then use some thread to stitch that together, but you also could use a long arm stapler. And so you would just stack up all your papers here with your cover on the outside and then slide this down. I'm not gonna punch this while we're filming because it's very loud and I would have to edit that out anyway, but it does take a little practice to see exactly where that staple is going to come out at. So have a practice page and make some folds and get to the point where you've got your staple coming right into that groove. And so once you have that done, you will see once you start adding all of those papers, you're going to kind of offset the inside ones as the bulk of it fills it up. And so I just came to my guillotine cutter and removed the excess right along the pattern paper line, so everything would look nice and smooth and even. And for my book today, I'm using 4 of the inserts. Even though I have 2 elastics, I will jump 2 of these together so that I can utilize 1 elastic for 2 inserts. So here are the inserts that I've created for my book, and you can see there are 4, and I just alternated those colors with the traditional palette so that I can swap these in and out. I will mention before we get started that because this is printer paper, it isn't exactly like a cardstock quality. So you will likely have only one side of this to write on so that it doesn't bleed through. If you want to utilize a heavier cardstock, I would suggest perhaps not stapling it and just using the bands to hold it in place, because it did get pretty bulky and it was difficult when I tried to cut off the excess. So I'm much happier just to utilize one side of this paper. I can swap them out anyway, so that's not a big deal. But just keep that in mind if you decide to use heavier cardstock, that it's just going to be a little bit bulkier and a little bit harder to manage. So now that we have our inserts created, I want to create a very sturdy cover for this, and I'm going to start with 110-pound cardstock. So I am going to cut this first piece to be 6 inches high by 10 inches wide, scored at 4.5 and also 5.5. So we're going to get a 1-inch deep spine, which will be perfect for those 4 inserts. I'm also going to cut 2 pieces of 65-pound weight cardstock, and this one is 6 high by 9 wide and scored at 4.5. And so we're just going to wrap the front and back cover with this. It will add layers of sturdiness as well as give us a nice finished edge. So we're going in with our 2 glue combo, and I'll just set the corner of this down right alongside my score line and keep it straight across the bottom and the side. Press that in, and now you can take the backing off the tape on this side and then just go ahead and repeat that process using your 2 glues, and then that will give us a nice sturdy front cover. I'm repeating that process for this side. And before we go any further, I also want to cover this base with some cardstock and pattern paper. The cardstock for this is 5 7/8 by 4 3/8, and the pattern paper is 5 3/4 by 4 1/8. I'm just going to use that same pattern for the inside as well as the outside, because remember, I said I wanted to get the maximum frugal use out of each of these sheets that I cut into. So I think this is one sheet that is doing a pretty good job of getting things covered. Now you can see also that we're going to be into 6 layers of paper for that cover. So it is very sturdy. You don't have to do that. You could mix and match if you're looking to work through your stash. Just put together any combination that makes you happy. So now we have our cover. I do want to punch holes in here so that I can string it with elastic. I'm going to use my Crop-A-Dile. I will do that off camera because it's easier for me to see if I can look over the top of it. But I will show you where those holes are so that I can string it with my elastic. So you can see now that I have my 4 holes punched just in from the bottom and in from the score. And it doesn't really have to be exactly perfect, but just do your best to kind of get them lined up. And then also I should mention that I did use the smaller punch on that Crop-A-Dile. We only need a little bit of room for that elastic to go through. And so I just got this from Amazon, and it would be more fun to have matching colors for everything, but I've just got that one big roll, so I'm going to utilize that. And so the first step is to bring that from the inside to the outside, and then wrap it around the outside and bring it back to the inside. And so I'm just going to sort of work along and pull that so that I have a generous amount. You don't want this to be too tight or it will damage your cover or potentially your insert. And so you do want it to be just a little bit snug but not tight. So you can adjust this as you go along. And now I have this coming up from this side as well. So I see that you want to have a little bit of extra to work with to tie my knot for this side. And so I'll just clip off some here, and then I'll tie myself a knot. This will be enclosed within a set of those inserts that we're going to band together. And you can see that it's just a little snug, but definitely not to the point where it's going to misshapen the cover. You can just remove the excess. I would normally wait to the end of getting this filled in to decorate the cover, but it will be easy to just flatten this out on my work surface. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I am also choosing to not add all of the dimensional elements so that this will be easier to write in. So here is a pretty doily and a circular die cut of a 4x4 cut apart. I've also added a layer of the green cardstock that we're using throughout. And so this is just going to be a nice sentiment. Now, these have been folded, but they're not shaped. And I don't have a dimensional stamen, so these are going to be pretty flat as well. I'm just going to add this small little cluster here right along the bottom of that circular die cut. So that is going to be it for the front cover. As I mentioned before, I am trying to get the most use out of those 12x12 sheets. And for each pattern I used, I was able to get 2 portions that would cover the insert here. And so I've elected to use one of them as just the plain pattern paper, and then I'm going to use the other one to create a dashboard. And so my thinking is that I will be able to utilize these inserts, write in them, use them up, swap them out. But if I have my dashboards, just something to wrap around that, I will be able to keep all of the cute details and festive layering that I'm adding, and then I'll just remove the used inserts and bring in a new one. And so here is the dashboard for this insert, and I'm just going to alternate through those patterns. So I have 4 patterns, and I'll use a different one for the dashboard on to the insert. I'm also going to add some fun edge details. Because this lister is not intended to be put in my purse, I can have some things hanging off the edge and make it a little bit more textural and detailed. And so I do want to add this little scalloped die cut. This came from the Lawn Fawn rooftop border set. And so basically it's just meant to be lined up and create a rooftop with a chimney on a greeting card. But I found that it's the perfect size, 5.5 inches, for this particular insert size. So I'm just going to line this up along the edge where the indentation of the scallop is, so I can keep that nice and straight and even going across. You can see that we have that fun detail. Another thing about these sticker sheets is they always, well, typically always have a border strip or 2 along the bottom, and I am very guilty for not using those. But today I am going to get into that and add an additional layer of pattern here. And so this is just kind of a diagonal stripe, and I'm going to line it up once again with that indentation of the scallop so that I can keep it nice and straight and even going along the side here. You want to burnish that in pretty well. These stickers do need a little bit of extra help. And then I just cut off the excess so that it would be even with the end. Now, this is going to be where I can make my little mini cards, as it were, to decorate the tops of these. So we will add a white doily here, and then a die cut of another of the journal card images. I was able to use 5 of them for this project, so that seems like a good use of my stash. And I just like that combination of the craft background and the red flowers kind of tied in with the red on that pattern paper. So I also have a couple of stickers that I want to use here. I'm going to layer a couple of them behind my sentiment, and then I'll add one to the top. I'm getting a little bit less intimidated by the sticker clusters as I'm doing them more often with my October Stories album. If you want to check those out, I share them on Mondays, and it's just my October documented album, and I'm just creating the layouts for you there. So Monday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern if you want to see those. Here's another cluster of little houses. This time I've got a snowman and another of those little die cut stars, and this is going closer to the bottom so that I don't cover up too much of that sentiment. And so this is going to act as a dashboard, and I'll just wrap that around the insert before I add it to the book. So now I have one of these created. I'll share with you the remaining ones. So here is another one of the dashboards, and I used that same diagonal strip on the sticker sheet with the scalloped edge. This time I just have one of the journal cutter parts used with a stitched edge detail, a couple of stars here, and some sentiment strips. Now I also wanted to incorporate some additional textures to the end. So I've got my dashboard created here, and I've just hot glued on this teeny tiny pom-pom trim. And then the last one here has quite a few layered details. and I think it's very sweet. It's kind of like making little cards and then just wrapping them around my inserts. So this one has red pom-pom trim, and so that will look nice all together in my book. Now, because we only have 2 elastics in the book, we're going to have to jump these together. And what I mean by that is to add the inserts. I'm just swapping out these patterns so that I got a good mix and match variety working throughout. Now I want to join these 2 together by banding them here. So I've just got this stretch cord. I picked this up from the Dollar General, and it is much smaller than the elastic we used for our cover. But the purpose is just to connect these 2 inserts so that I can add them as one. So now let's just add that to the cover, and instead of using the elastic here, I'm going to put the elastic between the 2 inserts. So now you see we've got 2 on one side, and I'll just repeat that for this side as well. Okay, so now I've got all 4 of those inserts with their dashboards added, and you can see that it really did fill up that space nicely. And so it's going to be nice to be able to just use this year after year. I'll just refill those inserts and use my dashboards and my cover, and that way this will be very useful going forward. I think another thing that I want to add that will be very helpful when using this lister is a way to keep your place. So I'm just using a tabbed top divider, and I did cut this to be 5.5 by 4.5. Then I cut a 2 3/4 inch tab with my envelope punch board, and then I remove the excess so that tab will stick up, and then I can just place this in whatever day I'm working with, and I'll have 2. So the plan for my inserts is that I will have one for personal, like home things that I want to keep track of, and then one for work things that could potentially be video ideas or project ideas or ideas for some new printables that I want to add to my shop. So I think this is going to be a great way to keep all of those lists organized and make it fun and festive. If there is projects that you would like to see me create in a tutorial or a printable, just let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this tutorial, let me know. Give me a big thumbs up for this video. If you're not already, I would love for you to subscribe, join my crafty little family. Remember, you can find links for our socials in the description below. And as always, I'm wishing you a happy and productive day, and I thank you so much for watching. Bye.